So, you might know this by now. You might not. We're talking about the Sermon on the Mount. One more week after this one. The Sermon on the Mount, this summary of what Jesus had to say, of what Jesus had to teach. A very, you could say, compact, you could say dense. There's a lot in it. And today, Jesus starts talking about stuff. And that can always make us a little uncomfortable, because we have plenty of stuff. We, as a people, have more stuff than anyone has ever had, any culture, any civilization has ever had, ever. We have piles and piles of stuff. Even if you think you don't have a lot, you do. And this kind of came back to me when Jesus talks about clothing. Now in this modern translation, they talk about fashion, so that we get some idea. But fashion wasn't an issue. Not because fashion didn't change, but because to be able to buy a new clothing was such a big deal. You just didn't get to do it very often. It wasn't that people didn't want to do fancy things. But clothing was a big, expensive commodity. When you think about the amount of work it takes to get from a sheep to a dress, or from some plants growing in a field to a shirt, the amount of work it takes to achieve that is immense. And even, this is much later than Jesus' time, but these dresses would be kept and passed down for hundreds of years. If you go back to people's wills from the Middle Ages, they'll be very clear. They'll say, I'm giving away my silver plate to my brother. I'm giving my best gown to my sister, my second best gown to my cousin, 2 of my shirts, and they would go through all of their pieces of clothing. And there weren't that many. Even for people who were wealthy, they might have 2 or 3 really nice pieces of clothing that they would carry through their whole lives. So when Jesus says, don't worry about what you wear, this is a big deal. If your piece of clothing, which is all most people have, gets damaged or stolen, you might not have the money to get another one. It would be maybe like saying, don't worry about your car. You know, for me, if my car just went away tomorrow, it would be a major financial issue. And that might be the way to think of it. Something most of us need or think we need that takes up a lot of our time and energy. But for clothing specifically, even for us, you know, it's still an issue. And this one is hard for me because for most of my life, I took don't worry about what you wear very, very literally. And I still have trouble really taking this whole thing of making sure you look nice very seriously. Deep in my heart, I just don't really believe it's all that important. That's the truth. And I learned something about how it works when I was in a church, the first church I joined. And I've mentioned this church before. It was an African-American church. Dan's confused now because I'm switching things around, but that's not his fault. This is not that church, but it kind of gives you, they have the same uniform. These people in the white uniforms with the tags, they're ushers. And as in the church that I went to, every week you would come in and there would be white uniformed ushers leading you in. Everybody was dressed. Now in this church, because it was a Christian church and not a Baptist church, they didn't wear the big elaborate hats that you see a lot of times, but very formal clothing. The ministers in impeccable 3-piece suits, ties, matching handkerchiefs, the whole bit. And I showed up in my khakis and sweater that was a little too big. And that was okay, I guess. until I actually was up there with the ministers. And Kate took me aside and she said, Alan, we need to do something about this. Now, I didn't understand this at the time. I just knew I better follow the rules of this church. What I came to understand was that for that particular church, in that particular time and place, the dress was sending a message. The clothing was sending a message. And the message was, you know what, we're doctors too. This church was composed of people who had been doctors, lawyers, college professors in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. At a time when you know, the country they lived in wouldn't even let them eat in the same restaurants as most of the people they were equals to, really. And the clothing and the formality was a statement not about them, but about their community. It was saying, you know, it was a way of recognizing the dignity that they had to fight for. And so it was important for me to respect that and to put on a suit. Now, I was a student, so Kate and I went to Goodwill and picked out a $4 jacket and a $2 pair of pants and one of Dr. Moore's 50-cent ties. But that was okay. You know, I was not the best dressed person there, but I was doing it. And I went on like that for a while. One day, I got a call Kate got a call, rather, from a friend of hers. Now, Kate worked at a bank where, in the division of the bank in Chicago, up in the Loop, where the customers in her division were the people who had $250,000 or more to invest. The guy who talked to her was the vice president of sales. So he spent his entire day going to multi-millionaires. I mean, he knew Oprah. He knew lots of other less famous but very wealthy people in Chicago. And his job was to get them to give him their money. He was a very, very well-dressed man. And he invited Kate to have me come over and get some hand-me-downs. Which didn't bother me in the slightest, let me tell you. So we get in our 10-year-old Chevy Corsica, speaking of cars, drive up Lakeshore Drive to go where they have the skyscrapers, and it's called the Gold Coast for a reason. Go into the building, past the doorman who lets us know where to go, calls up, make sure he's expecting us. And the doorman really wanted to make sure that we actually belonged there, I think. And came into this guy's house, and he had a two-bedroom, he was single, he had a two-bedroom apartment, condo, I guess, and one bedroom was the clothing room. It was kind of like if you've ever been to a really upscale department store, like a Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom's or something like that, only better organized. The shirts and ties were, and there were about 200 ties, organized by color. He had just racks and racks. It was amazing. Just I've never seen anything like it anywhere. And we spent a couple hours there. By the time I was done, I had about 4 or 5 suits with Italian names on it that I kind of sort of big. I knew Armani meant something, but I didn't know exactly what. I'm serious. These 20 ties, shirts, all these clothes, and this was, you know, it didn't mean anything to him. And I get in the car, we put it all in garment bags and going. And I said to Kate, "How much is this stuff worth?" And Kate said, "Well, I don't know exactly, but I do know it's worth more than the car." And it was, you know. And just for that, I felt the need to, you know, make some effort to take care of it. But it was hard for me to get used to that idea that what you wear communicates something. And getting up in front of people, I had to think about what I was communicating. And that's one of the reasons that clothing becomes such a deal for churches. You know, this don't worry about the fashion or the style. And it doesn't matter what your style is. Most churches have very clear rules. You know, I went back to look for a picture. I do mean back. A picture of a church where everybody was in suits. I couldn't find one. I don't think it's because there aren't churches that are in suits, but because they aren't putting their pictures up on the internet. But I've taken flight. I got kind of challenged or critiqued by a minister who wanted to know why I wasn't wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, because that's what I should be wearing if I wanted to reach people today. And everybody at his church wore blue jeans and a t-shirt. Wait a minute. You know, this is a picture of a cowboy church. There's almost every church has rules for how you should dress. And one thing about the rule, it doesn't matter whether the rule is you wear a suit or whether the rule is you wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's the existence of the rule that matters. And one of the things I get kind of excited about is looking around here and seeing t-shirts and suits in the same room. That's something I'm very proud of. And Howard, when I saw him today, he came up. I'm so glad you wore a suit today, because I was afraid there might not be one. So it's important for people to know that they can come and be comfortable being who they are. You know, I hung around goth kids and punk kids when I was a teenager. My teenage rebellion was to not look that weird. It's not so much about what clothes you wear or what style of clothes you wear, it's whether you're making a big deal out of the style of clothes. And I think as I was getting ready this morning, and I was late and rushing around, so maybe this isn't the best morning for me to bring this up. But I wonder, as we get ready for church, doing whatever it is that we do, you know, how would our churches look? How would our world look if we put the same effort into getting our spirits clean? If we were brushing off our souls, if we were shining our hearts, if we were combing the tangles out of our life, what would the world look like? Now, some people do. Some people do spend that time every morning, every evening. I'll tell you, it does show that daily care that we just take for granted. You brush your teeth 2 times a day, because if you don't, your teeth fall out. There are some rules like that apply to our spiritual life. And it's much harder to discipline yourself to do those things because there's nobody around reminding you that your teeth are going to fall out. And because those of us who are supposed to be reminding you of those things don't want to nag you, because nobody likes to be nagged. But the truth is, it does matter if you take that time every day to take care of your spiritual life the same way you take care of your physical life. And when you do, things happen. You know, this quote, the Lord doesn't look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. It's worthwhile to take some time to keep your heart in good shape, the same way we're supposed to be keeping our hearts in good shape.